My name is Raymond Ashagian with Amazing Women's Stories, and we are honored to have with us Sani Soltani, City Attorney, City of Carson. Sunny, how are you?
Great. Thank you, Raymond, for having me.
It's a pleasure, and thank you for taking the time to share your inspirational journey of life with us.
Thank
Sunny, let's jump in as we want to learn more about who you are. And of course, we have to start asking about your family makeup and children and all those wonderful details, which is a very important part of everyone's life.
It is a very and it is a very important and a big part of my being and who I am. I am married to Rocky Forutan, and we have three lovely daughters, which puts a great deal of responsibility on me as a working mom to be a good role model and to teach them how to balance a professional life with a family life. My oldest one, 18 years old, Chayana Forutan, is a college student at NYU. My middle one, Inaz Forutan, is 16 years old, and she's a junior in high school. And the baby, Dahlia Forutan, is in 5th grade, and she's 11.
Sounds like you're a busy mom.
I am a busy mom.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Congratulations.
It's
Sounds
the
like
most important job that I have.
absolutely. Sounds like you have a beautiful family. Thank you for sharing that. So let's talk about you and your career and your profession. So did you come out of law school and enter into a position right away in a private sector, or were you in any other positions prior to what you do today?
So I went to law school because I firmly believed in civil rights. And I have a childhood trauma that I had to survive where my dad was executed by the Islamic Republic of Iran without the right to a lawyer, without a fair trial, simply because he refused to take his post as a general for the Islamic Republic of Iran. I think I was 5 years old back then. So I think this sense of wanting to fight for justice got instilled in me at a very young age. I didn't understand how somebody could be deprived of their life, of an opportunity to be with their children and to live a life just because a government decided that they're going to execute him because he did not serve their needs. Growing up, I think this inherent need to fight for justice was within me, and it fostered. So when I went to law school, did I go because I wanted to, be a fighter for civil rights or go look at making a difference in a community? No. I went to law school because I love debate. I love being a lawyer. I love the thought of being a lawyer, but I think somewhere on a very deep subconscious level, it must have been driven from that need to fight for justice and to fight for people that can't fight for themselves. So I graduated top 5% of my law school. I went to UCLA undergrad and I went to Loyola Law School, graduated number 13 out of my class. And as a result, I was offered jobs by some of the largest law firms in the nation. I accepted a job with Paul Hastings, Janofsky and Walker, reputable international law firm. Quickly I realized that I would be doing business litigation or employment litigation. I called my constitutional law professor and I asked him, I said, if I want to deal with the constitutional issues that we learned in law school in your class, what do I do? And he said, you either work for public agencies or you go work for the ACLU. And that planted a seed. I started looking at law firms that represent public agencies. I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to be an in-house city attorney or county attorney. I still wanted to have a private sector experience as well. And I was lucky enough that I landed a position with a very reputable public law firm. A year into being there, 6 of the partners wanted to go and start a new firm. I was just the second, third year. they asked me to join them. That was 20 years ago. We actually celebrated the 20th anniversary of our firm this year. So I took a chance. I left with them. We were 8 or 9 attorneys when we started the law firm of Aleshire and Wynder. So I'm the founding member.
And you were out of law school just for like 1
I
year.
was, yeah, 2-3 years.
You must have been a superstar back in your first year, obviously. No seasoned attorney, I can't imagine, would just take a newbie out of law school. So you must have done a phenomenal job.
I did graduate top of my class. I think law firms care about that. And here we are 20 years later. I'm an equity partner. I'm actually the first female on our executive committee. And so we have a 3-member executive committee, and the rest is history.
How big is the firm?
We're a mid-sized law firm. We have, I think we have 6 offices. We have over 100 employees, and we have about over 60 attorneys now.
That's exciting.
Fabulous. It is exciting.
Wow. And is it specifically in that area, or do you cover other areas of law?
No, we're public law servants. We're laser focused on representing public agencies throughout California. Our mission is that we implement the policies that the communities we serve want implemented. We don't sue public agencies. We only represent public agencies. So we're very, very laser focused on representing public agencies.
Sounds like you're going back to what you mentioned. Sounds like your father was an amazing man and highly principled, because I'm sure it must have been very difficult for him to, to stand firm on the principles. It sounds like you've inherited those principles in your way of life, if I'm not mistaken, and everything you've done since.
Thank you. I do think that being of public service is important to me. And I do think that came from the sense of public service that my dad had. It can be a different country, but the principle is the same, and you're nailing it on the head. It's giving back to a community. And I spent the first 15 years of my legal career being a litigator. And one of the most critical, two critical components that I dealt with. One of them was protecting rent control throughout California. Through being at the right time, at the right place at the right time, where there was a property owner that wanted to challenge rent control within the state of California, I ended up being a top litigator, litigating those cases where they were trying to take rent control away. And the case went all the way to the California Supreme Court. We won. And in addition to winning and preserving rent control in California, we were able to actually revert back some land use powers that throughout the legislative process had been taken away from cities in protecting low-income people in their communities. And I was part of a team that litigated those cases and part of the team that actually legislated to close some state loopholes to make sure that the most vulnerable people in our society remain protected. The second series of cases I was involved with, again, timing's everything. If you open your heart to the universe and you just want to do the right thing, I believe you're given the opportunities to implement your dreams, right? And so one of the reasons I did this was because I wanted to be the voice of the voiceless. I wanted to have an opportunity to represent people that can't really defend themselves. So I got very lucky that I ended up in a community where there were environmental justice issues. And there was a former oil field that had been capped in the 1950s very improperly. And the oil wells were leaking methane gas. And I was part of the team, yes, and I was part of the team that actually worked with Department of Toxic Substances Control and the Regional Quality Water Regional Water Board to remediate these sites and to recap the oil wells to current standards. And we actually then negotiated deals with auto dealers, shopping center, big box developers to bring sales tax generating uses back into these communities that could have really benefited from having a good sales tax use in their community. So I got very, very lucky to have those trial experiences under my belt. One of my trials was 21 consolidated cases, and you had a host of lawyers on one side that represented the property owners and the oil industry, and it was me and another associate, because back then the firm was smaller. Right now, I would probably have more associates with me. And we won all of those lawsuits. We saved that public agency over $21 million that went towards redeveloping those sites and making the environment safer. So because of the work I had done when City of Carson, my law partner, who was the city attorney there, and he had to go on a sabbatical, and he asked the city council who they wanted to take over. Of course, I was one of the people that they presented as an option. They chose me, and that was, oh my goodness, 10 years ago now.
Oh, so
And
you've been city attorney for 10 years now.
I have been the city attorney in City of Carson for 10 years. And I have to tell you, it has been the ride of my life. I got to be a part of the team that negotiated to bring NFL back to LA, even though we didn't get the Chargers and the Raiders coming to Carson. I did get to be involved in all of those negotiations, and just having that experience of pulling a billion-dollar deal together in 6 months, that was an experience in itself. Then, we had Occidental USA, another oil industry that wanted to come in Carson, and they wanted to put 200 wells in our city. As a matter of right, there were fracking issues we were concerned about. I got to represent the city and the residents of Carson in that battle, and we were successful in stopping that project from going forward. We have the largest oil refinery on the West Coast for the first time since I've been the city attorney, and I have a very, very fearless city council, which makes my job really fun. But working with the city council and city staff, we have looked at the impacts that the operations have had in this community, and we have had many battles with them. We got a $45 million settlement out of the oil refinery that was earmarked to do upgrades to address environmental issues in the city of Carson. I got to be a part of that. It's just one blessing after another blessing. And I do look at them as blessings, because I am in a profession where I get paid to give back to the community, and it's a blessing.
And you've obviously been very committed to that. And actually, while you're telling me all about these amazing experiences and accomplishments, one thing comes to mind, which is, how did you juggle that with children? Because it sounded like you really had to put in some extra hours. How did you pull that off?
Well, first of all, I want to thank my spouse, Rocky Fortan, who is just amazing. He's out there picking up kids, bringing kids back. He's very respectful of the fact that we both have our businesses, we both are professionals. And so the tasks between running the household and having our professional lives is equally divided amongst the two of us. I was blessed enough until 2 years ago to have my mom, who was here, and she was very devoted and very helpful. I have just beautiful independent children. And Raymond, I always tell my my friends who are not working moms that at some point we just have to believe that we've raised our kids and we've given them the essential tools they need to be independent, responsible children. And I think that was one of the objectives Rocky and I had from the beginning of our marriage. We went to a family therapist when I was pregnant without any issues. We asked for a set of tools to assist us both live fulfilled professional lives and to allow us to be good parents to our kids. And it didn't come easy. There were a lot of cultural barriers that we had to actually understand and break. And yes, I'm very lucky that I had a husband that was so open-minded that he could sit down and participate in that process with me. And so our children were taught from very early on that they're responsible for their own studies. They're responsible. I mean, I don't check report cards unless a teacher emails me and says, your daughter, we have an issue. You got to look at this. And I've been lucky enough. Obviously, my daughter's at NYU. The other one's a 4.5 GPA. So I guess if I'm giving advice to working mothers, it is that you have to trust that your children are going to follow you as a role model. If you're responsible, if you have a process that you follow, your children are going to follow your actions. You don't need to micromanage them. You don't need to suffocate them. They actually become better adults and more responsible adults if they are left to make some decisions independently.
That's outstanding. Well, outstanding mom, and it sounds like outstanding children. So it sounds like that formula has definitely worked for you, and that's wonderful to hear. Let me ask you a question with regards to your career in this capacity. Did you find, first of all, on the public service side and what your firm does, did you find that originally, I mean, you've been doing this for 20 years, that it was really more of a man's world when you first got involved? Was it that way?
It's still a man's world. It's still a man's world, but my attitude is that I know what I'm capable of. I don't need to prove myself to anybody, and I'm just going to be the best Sunny that I can be. One of the things I always tell my associates when I'm mentoring them is that be curious. That's rule number one. And rule number two is be informed. If I was going to have an opposing counsel, I understood my job would be a little bit harder than maybe another man. I would study their cases. I would be very informed about their patterns, and I would make a decision. I would, of course, confer with my client or whoever was my supervising attorney back then. And I was unapologetically and unequivocally, I was unequivocally unapologetic about decisions I made. And once I made a decision, I would implement it. People like to feel that you know what you want and you know what you're doing. So I don't care if you're a man, if you're a woman, as long as you ooze that confidence and your actions, of course, have to match up. I think at some point those gender roles become a little bit more even kill. So yes, it was very, very difficult to kind of penetrate certain situations, and it still is. But I have learned to ignore those barriers, go in, be informed, be strong, be confident, and with no time, I think people realize, okay, this is not, gender kind of goes away in negotiations or in a courtroom at some point. At least for me, that's been my experience.
Sure. And it sounds like if anyone had doubts, you proved them that not only are you equal, you could be in many cases superior. So it was not a disadvantage. It was actually an advantage.
I do have to say something though, Raymond. As part of the management of the firm, one of the issues that recently we had started, well, not recently, in the last 2 years, we've started looking at is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And one of my law partners actually went back to Cornell to get her certificate in setting up DEIs. And through that process, I have learned that I may have actually been unique in the way that I could, and maybe it was a circumstance of my childhood and everything I had to endure. People have different thresholds and people have different levels of how they can deal with circumstances. So one of the best examples, she gave us was if you have a short woman, a very tall man, and a disabled person on a wheelchair, and you give all of them a big bicycle and you say, okay, there you go, we have equity now because all three of you have the same size bicycle, so go at it, race. Well, that's not really equitable because the short woman needs a shorter bicycle, the tall man gets the tall one, and the person on the wheelchair may need something different, right? So I have really taken that to heart. So my answer was an answer that's personal to me. I understand that there are women that may have to have different sets of accommodations. They may not have my mom who I had, I was blessed enough to have. They may not have a husband like my husband that's so accommodating and such a great partner. So I want to be careful not to suggest that as a female in a male-dominated field, you just have to go there and just fight your way and then, you know, prove yourself and then you succeed. That is not, that's what I did. It worked for me and it really didn't upset me because it didn't bother me. But people have different circumstances and each situation has to be looked at from the lens of what's equitable in that situation.
Absolutely. I understand and I appreciate that. So is this field that you're in and your specialty still a man's world even now? You were joking about this before, but I would have just thought throughout the years with a number of women that are in key positions that would have transitioned.
So I don't want to give the wrong data, but it's we recently came across a study that showed I mean, it's less than 30%, I want to say.
Women?
Yes. I mean, law is a male-dominated field, but then public law specifically is even more male-dominated. And I should have had the data handy because we actually just spoke, my partner and I just spoke at the League of California Cities Conference about this. And yes, it's still very much a male-dominated world. And it's not just the city attorney field, it's public service, council members, legislature. It's starting to slowly change. That demographic is starting to slowly change, but we're still nowhere close to having an equal.
It's very interesting considering the number of women we have on the state level on leadership roles, state government, right?
That's
we
true.
have the lieutenant governor, we had the state controller, treasurer, secretary of state. I mean, we have so many amazing women that have been in leadership roles. So I think it's just a matter of time. I think these percentages should be increasing, if I'm not mistaken.
I agree.
So with that being said, I appreciate you sharing all of this information. Of course, you know, many of our viewers are going to be listening to this interview. And my final question for you is, what is your inspirational message, your word of advice to all the women listening to the amazing story of Sunny Soltani? What do you have to share with them?
I think it's along the lines of what I said earlier. I think people want to, people gravitate towards people who are sure of what they want and they know how to implement it. So be unapologetically unequivocal about your decisions. Don't second guess yourself. Follow your intuition. There's always a little voice in the universe, whatever you want to call it, that's speaking to you. Be curious and allow your heart to be open to receive the messages. And once you receive those messages, be sure of what you want and go out there and implement it.
That's worked for you. That sounds like a beautiful message.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Sunny. Thank you for your time and thank you for sharing your inspirational story with everyone.
Thank you for including me in this. Thanks. Bye.